Hey, love, let's talk about something that a lot of people experience, but don't always have language for. That moment when someone you feel close to suddenly pulls away, when the energy shifts, when texts slow down, plans get fuzzy, and you're left wondering what just happened. And maybe they come back with an apology, an explanation, a long message about stress, health, money, work, all very real things. And you read it and you understand it, but yet you still feel unsettled. If that sounds familiar, you are not alone. You're not imagining things either. Today, we're going to talk about the fearful avoidant attachment style and what it looks like in real life, why apologies sometimes don't lead to change, and how to hold compassion without abandoning yourself. So let's take a breath. Good. You count 3, 2, 1. Exhale slow. 4. Get comfortable. This one's for the heart. Especially, we know within 10 days that the February 14th is right around the corner. So let's do a quick orientation. Not all avoidants are the same. When people talk about avoidant attachment, it often gets flattened into one thing, but they are actually two main avoidant patterns in adult relationships. First, the dismissive avoidant. The dismissive avoidant folks tend to value independence over closeness. They minimize emotions, avoid vulnerability, and don't usually feel a strong pull, emotional intimacy. When they pull away, it's often clean and quiet. They don't expect much. They don't apologize much either. Distance feels natural to them. Is the fearful avoidance, sometimes called disorganized attachment. Both can be created from experiencing childhood abandonment wounds, from dismissive parents, and all the rest. We've talked about that in a variety of my other articles. But this is a very different inner experience, the fearful avoidant, because the fearful avoidant people, they crave closeness, in fact, deeply, but they're also terrified of it at the same time. They want the connection. They want the intimacy. They really want the reassurance. And at the same time, closeness activates old wounds. That fear of abandonment, feeling of being hurt, fear of losing themselves. Now, all of those fears stem from previous experiences that they may have had in earlier versions of themselves. So they swing towards you and away from you and then back again. From the outside, both avoidance styles can look distant and but internally, dismissive avoidant doesn't prioritize closeness. A fearful avoidant desperately wants it and panics when it starts to feel real. So let's make this human. You meet someone, the chemistry is instant, they text you constantly. They may even open up quickly. They share vulnerable stories. They talk about future plans. You feel seen. You feel chosen. Maybe even swept up in how natural and exciting it feels. And then something shifts. Not a not a dramatic disappearance, but subtle distance. Texts, they get shorter. Replies take longer. Plans turn very vague. When you check in, they say they're just stressed, overwhelmed, or just need a little space. So you give it to them. A few days later, they're back. Warm, apologetic, affectionate, acting like nothing ever happened. And then it happens again. Close, distant, close, distant. You start walking on eggshells, never quite sure which version of them you're going to get. That's not you being overly sensitive. That's a nervous system of theirs and a nervous system pattern that's just simply playing out. What's actually happening between the surface? If someone has a fearful, avoidant attachment style, here's what's actually and usually happening inside. At first, there's the pull. Connection feels good. safe intoxicated. But as emotional closeness deepens, their nervous system starts to panic. Closeness activates old, unhealed experiences, moments where love didn't feel safe, consistent, or predictable. So their body reacts before their mind does. They pull back, not because they don't care, because they're overwhelmed. Distance feels safer than connection in that moment. And this is important. They're not consciously thinking about how it affects you. They're just trying to regulate their own internal chaos. Or again, remember, consciously, they really are not thinking how it affects you. They're so sensitive that they're just trying to regulate their own internal chaos. And this can happen in adults who are 70 and 80 years old, as well as your teenager. Which brings me to the apology loop and why it feels real, but is always basically incomplete. Often, fearful avoidant people do recognize this pattern. They feel guilty, they apologize, they may say things like, "I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to hurt you. Please don't take it personally. I just had a lot going on." And here's the thing, they usually really mean that, and they mean the words that they're saying. But without deeper support, such as therapy, nervous system work, self awareness, that apology becomes a way to ease guilt and not change their behavior. So the cycle simply repeats: wash, rinse, repeat. The apology may feel sincere, but the inconsistency stays, and that's why it leaves you feeling confused instead of reassured. Because apology is not the same as repair. Repair requires presence, consistency, accountability, follow through. That sounds very adulting like, doesn't it? If you are on the receiving end of things like this and messages like this and apologies like that, and if you're the one receiving messages like this, I want to say a few things clearly. You didn't imagine the shift. You didn't cause it. And you are not too much. It's okay to understand someone's struggles and still feel hurt by their absence. It's okay to care without rescuing, to listen without minimizing your own experience. That one's vital. Okay. And it's also important to hold compassion and boundaries at the same time. Understanding the avoidance stress response doesn't require you to excuse its impact upon yourself. Someone else's pain can be real and still separate from what you need to feel safe and secure. Okay, I'll say that again. Someone else's pain can absolutely be real and still be separate from what you need to feel safe and secure. Now, what can both people on either side of this coin, what can they do at this stage? If you recognize yourself as a fearful avoidant, awareness is everything. When you feel the urge to pull away, pause and ask yourself, am I actually unsafe or is it just feeling uncomfortable? Try communicating before disappearing, even if you're communicating with yourself. Okay? Awareness is the first step to starting the healing process. Instead of ghosting them, right? So ghosting them, say, I'm feeling overwhelmed and I need time to process. I'll check back in on Friday or I'll check back in 2 weeks. Okay. And if you can seek support, attachment focused on somatic therapy can help your nervous system learn that closeness doesn't have to equal danger. Okay. That's really important. The one thing that's very difficult for the fearful avoidant as an adult, they want to have that closeness, but they're scared to get close. And then again, it stems from hurt that they experienced. And what's ironic is that often subconsciously they seek out people that really repeat that same cycle of what they felt when they were young and hurt. And it's not because they're trying to, like, let me relive that pain. No, it's because it's what's familiar, okay? It's what's familiar. So they go with what's familiar versus what's unfamiliar, because unfamiliar, or rather, a healthy relationship looks really scary. And I know that sounds really bizarre, but a lot of people have not had non-toxic relationships. So if you're in a relationship though, with a fearful avoidant, or you know a friend that you wish to become closer with, you may wish to set boundaries gently and clearly. You can't fix someone else's attachment style just as much as you can't make them happy. You may be able to make them happier with your presence, but that's not your responsibility. It is not your job to tolerate emotional inconsistency that hurts you either. Okay, that's really important. Okay, it is not your job to tolerate someone else's emotional inconsistencies that continuously hurt you. And that's where, on the flip side, people run from the avoidant. Okay. And which is exactly what they're not trying to do in the first place. The avoidant's not trying to just tell you to go away. They just want to say, look, I need to go away. Okay, you stay right there, but I gotta go and, like, take a deep breath for a few minutes, and then I'll come back. But it doesn't work that way. Now, while you can't fix someone's obviously, when you can't fix someone else's attachment style, and it's not your job to tolerate their emotional inconsistency, that especially if it repeatedly hurts you, you wanna really think about that, and that again, that's why it's talking about those boundaries. Avoid chasing during this withdrawal period of the fearful avoidant. The more you pursue, most likely their system is just going to simply shut down. And be honest with yourself with what you're willing to accept. Compassion is a most beautiful thing, but so is self respect. So, the final thoughts here: fearful avoidant attachment is not a life sentence. Gosh, no, it's simply a pattern. And patterns can change with awareness, support, and consistent effort. But that's healing, but that healing has to come from the inside. Patterns, yes, they can change with awareness, support, and consistent effort. That healing comes from the inside. No amount of your love, your patience, or your understanding, or from anyone else, can do the work for them, the person who is a fearful avoidant or has a fearful avoidant attachment style, as it's called sometimes. And if you find yourself in this dynamic, the kindest thing you can do for both of you is be honest. Honest about what you need, honest about what's being offered, honest about whether this relationship, as it exists right now, can truly meet you where you are. You're allowed to choose clarity. You are allowed to choose peace. You most surely are allowed to love without losing yourself. And that, my dears, is very Nine of Cups energy. I wish you wonderful healing while you work through and learn more how to break the family curse of poor communication and avoidant attachment styles, to help break through and to learn a love language that suits you and for you with your relationships that you have now as an adult. I really mean that. I've been learning and healing so much for, oh gosh, since 2020 when I started going on this sort of healing from narcissistic abuse. And I've learned so much. But again, I am not a licensed therapist nor doctor, and I don't play one on YouTube or in any of my podcasts. So please seek out licensed therapists and licensed professionals to speak with, especially if any of this has resonated with you. If you're curious, learn more about the Snarky Tarot deck series that helps to break down and provide language for you and all parties of people who are avoidant attachment styles, as well as narcissists and those people that are recipients of narcissistic behaviors by others, with a language that is empowering, that helps break through the cycles and to help heal the situation while keeping your voice true to you, because you matter. You all matter. Blessings. Love from the Nine of Cups. This is Lily Q, SnarkyTarot.com and the Nine of Cups.com. Take care.